Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. For David, I'll get some light on my face by taking off my hat because I've got COVID hairdo, which is sort of what's been happening to most of us. And now that we're finally allowed, our hairdressers are open and stuff. So I might change my style soon back to more normal, but this is what I've been sporting for my whole COVID time. But yeah, I'd like to just first off, the fact is that all these adventures we get to go on are super privileged and we are so fortunate. And you see all the stuff that's happening in the US and around the world, and I think it's worth just stopping every once in a while and recognizing that we're lucky, and then if we can, reaching out and helping with colors of change or anything you can do, because it seems just so unhappy in a lot of the other parts of the world. So I'm definitely been a very fortunate person who has somehow had an amazing life. So today, yeah, we're gonna delve into a bunch of different adventures in these 5 locations. British Columbia is where I live, Jackson Hole, the Grand Teton, Norway, France, and Japan. And to me, like Beryl and I were just talking about, is that a lot of it really it's just having a destination to go on these amazing adventures, and they all have their pluses, they all have their minuses, and I'll tell you about them. And in the end, hopefully, it inspires you to go on some trip and to go skiing, or even to start skiing, because to me, skiing there's freedom about it. There's something that is so good about just sliding on snow. I don't know if it's just when I was a little kid and I was just tobogganing down my hill and that freedom of being a kid and falling in the snow, and then that just continued on in my life. But yeah, skiing is definitely my special thing, and it's what I've done forever. This is what I think is so special about it, is you just can go and express yourself and have fun in untracked snow. And here's a shot that with a photographer, we went out at 11 o'clock at night from this cabin, and we just went out to capture this one. We wanted to capture the Milky Way. So we spent a couple hours trying to get this shot that I think is pretty magical. And to me, it shows just the magic and freedom of skiing. A little bit about myself so that you can understand if I am experienced and if my point of view holds any weight. But I grew up skiing in Quebec, Eastern Canada. And it was a passion. We'd skip school, we'd go skiing as a family. A lot of my memories as a kid were going up the chairlift with my mom, eating snacks and skiing with her. And I think, like I was just saying, is that happiness as a child, what makes you happy as a child makes you happy as an adult. So I went from this little kid skiing in Quebec to eventually moving out west and skiing steep powder. And it's that same freedom and exuberance that I get skiing out here that I had as a little child. I've been out west for over half my life now. I'm 44, and I moved out in my 20s and just started climbing mountains. And I had a ton of energy, and I just focused all that energy on climbing, skiing, and adventuring, and looking at new summits and finding new descents and everything. I'm not only a skier, I'm a rock climber. This is the bugaboos. I just like adventuring. I like pushing myself and my friends and going to wild places. But I guess if we're over the years, I managed to separate myself through all these endurance feats. And I'm lucky as I work with all these great companies that support me, and I help them develop gear, which a couple of these trips we'll talk about. But through them helping me, I've been able to explore the world and see great places. So there's also should be an Arc'teryx logo in there, but I couldn't find one that worked on a black background for some reason. But yeah, we're going to start off in British Columbia because to me, British Columbia is where I moved to. It's where I've explored the most. It's where I've skied the most. And it is incredible. And the truth is that we're talking about the best powder on earth in this, but there's so many different styles of powder. There's the really fast powder that blows up. There's just this, I wanted to be inclusive of snowboarding because deep down I'm also a snowboarder, but there's all these different powders. And this one, it's only 10 centimeters on top of a hard surface, but yet it blows up and it surfs really well. And you could just find these turns, these magical moments in the trees, on mountaintops. It's just something about it. Quiet, untracked. That's essentially what I'm always searching for, is just untracked places. And like I say, there's different styles. This style of powder, this is the kind of stuff you typically find in Jackson. It's like where one turn is never stops, just deep, deep, deep. And this whole day, this was just a day in Rogers Pass near Revelstoke. I pushed these guys to do 10,000 feet or 3,000 meters, and that's all it was all day. It was powder like that. And can you just imagine the hooting and hollering that was happening? Just to show my dedication to the sport, I started pushing all these limits, these endurance limits, and trying to figure out what I could do and how many mountains I could climb in a day. And I set these goals, and the goals were just focused to get me out into the mountains more often. And my 2 million feet in 2010, I climbed and skied 2 million feet or 600 vertical kilometers, and all human powered, all hiking, backcountry skiing, which is when you put skins on your skis and you kind of cross country up, flick them and ski down, which is what most of this is about. But during that 2 million foot year, I traveled to South America for 4 months. I was in the States, I was everywhere. And it really was just an exploration of myself, my own personal limits, and what mountains could give back to me. And at this point, I just spent a whole year stressing about that tiny little number on a watch. And I'd actually just finished crying because it was this momentous moment. But to me, mountains have just taught me a ton, and I've had a blast. So I just wanted to share why I love these places. And for BC, I've got endless stories. I've been skiing here for 20 years. So I wasn't sure which one to kind of focus on to kind of show you the potential of it. You know, I cut my teeth in Whistler. That's where I started backcountry skiing. Whistler is incredible. I live in Revelstoke. One of my first seasons was in Sunshine at Banff. So I've kind of explored it all. But for me, it's the remote backcountry where I really find my happiness and find some great adventures. So this is the third highest peak in the Selkirk Range. And if you look up to the right, you can kind of see our tracks in the sun there. And this was one of the best trips of my life, for sure. We were skiing around Revelstoke, and the wind had been blasted, everything. And 2 days before this, I'd summited some peak, and the skiing was terrible. It was bulletproof. It was as hard as this table. And anyhow, we took a helicopter, flew into this place because we wanted to go deep. We wanted to go on an adventure, but we thought the snow was going to be super bad because of what we'd been experiencing. And we landed, and when the helicopter took off, we took a couple steps, and we realized there was 60 centimeters of fresh pow everywhere. And again, more hooting and hollering, and the adventures really began right there. And we were trying to ski some of the highest peaks in our range, and you know, we weren't sure what was going to happen. It's always the unknown. And you know, here we are, starting up Austerity, which is third highest peak in the Selkirks. And this line had never been skied before. Meanwhile, there's 60 centimeters of snow. And, you know, I was venturing into the unknown. I remember stepping across the Bergschrund, which is this gap, and looking down like 100 feet into this dark hole. And I had to jump across into the snow. And then there's all this powder. And I basically swam my way up the mountain, breaking trail for the team. And you know, it was this moment where all of a sudden we got up, stability was good and everything was working out. And we found this kind of stairway to the top here where it's cascading off on any side. And it was just this perfect trip that was turning out. And, you know, here you can see our tracks winding down this glacier. And to me, this just captured the raw beauty of BC, is that there's so much untracked everywhere. There's glaciers, there's peaks. And if you want adventure, it's pretty endless in this range. You know, here's the first turns off that summit. Nobody's ever skied off there before. And my buddy Dave is just cranking a really awesome turn high above every other peak, and just super amazing. Jeff here just joined us for the trip. He hadn't really skied with us all winter, and we're dedicated skiers in Revelstoke. And he came in, he hadn't skied much. He joined us on the trip. And then all of a sudden he was skiing a first ascent off our mountaintops and skiing crazy powder. And it was, he couldn't believe how lucky he was. Yeah, I mean, look at that right there. It's over his belly button, glacier, blue ice behind, just perfect skiing. So for me at BC, like, I think what's interesting about all these different areas is there's different styles, there's different, you know, some of them's all about resorts, some of them are all about guiding, like ski touring, but BC has got it all. We've got heli skiing. There's so much heli skiing in this province, it's unbelievable. I don't even know how many people go heli skiing every day in the winter, but it's a ton. And then there's a bunch of great resorts. I mentioned them. There's Whistler, there's Blackcomb, kind of the same. And then there's Sunshine and Banff area. Then there's Revelstoke, you know, Kicking Horse. There's only like, you know, 6 really bigger resorts, but there's so much options. You can snowcat skiing, which a snowcat will take you up the mountain. You can take snowmobiles up. Or like, in my mind, I mean, maybe it'll come out on the top at the end, who knows, but BC has got endless amount of opportunity in all the different forms of skiing you want to do. And to me, that is super special. But quite often, you know, we've all heard about the Grand Teton.
Maybe Greg, I can just ask you here. I mean, you live in Revelstoke. When did you move there? And is this great snow and skiing we saw the reason you did so?
Yeah, well, I went to university. I tried to follow the normal path of life because that's what you're supposed to do. And I was a climber, and yeah, I moved out west. I moved to Sunshine and Banff, and I did a year there, like I mentioned. And while I was there, I kept hearing about Rogers Pass and the incredible snow there. And then I moved to Whistler because Whistler's Whistler, and it's the iconic ski place in Canada. And while I was in Whistler, all I kept hearing about was Rogers Pass and Revelstoke. So yeah, in 2000, I moved to Revelstoke simply because of the amount of snow and the sea of mountains. It is endless. You know, I've been here 20 years. I've skied relentlessly, and I still have so much to ski. But you know, it's an incredible town, but I definitely just moved here for the powder.
Cool. And I hope the guiding scene and the guiding life supports you as well. You know.
Well, that's what's interesting is that the guiding has taken off in those 20 years. I only guide maybe 30 days a year because I'm a pro skier with all those, working with those companies, developing stories. But I mean, most of my friends are guides here. They're either heli ski guides or backcountry ski guides. And it's a thriving, or was a thriving industry until about March 13th this year. But yeah, I mean, there's so much to do here that as a guide, it's endless. And what I love about it is that the temperatures stay quite cold, and it can snow a ton, but then it won't change for weeks if the temperatures stay normal. You can always find nice snow. So for me as a guide, it's just having that security that whenever somebody books with me, it's probably 99% probability that it's going to be really good. So, but yeah, tons of guiding opportunity at Revelstoke. It's funny, all the different towns in Revelstoke have, like, Canmore's all about rock guides, Revelstoke's all about ski guides, and Squamish, Whistler's got a bit of blend of both, but mostly ski guides in this town, that's for sure.
Thanks.
But yeah, the Tetons. So I don't know, I started going to the Tetons. I did rando races in the early 2000s, and the Grand Teton is this incredible mountain you hear about. But it really is. In the States, there's a few places that get talked about, but I think to me the Tetons are one of the biggest because they have got a combination of great snow, big mountains. They're also the epicenter of ski mountaineering in the States. Like Bill Briggs, who skied the Grand Teton in 49 years ago, if you can do the math quickly. It's not happening in my head, but you know, it was the culmination of the best ski mountaineering in North America at the time, and it still is this test piece that I have yet to ski. So I've probably been there 5 or 6 times now. And this day was pretty epic. This is the dream. I don't know if that resonated with anybody, but that's what powder skiing is all about. I might even show it again once I tell you the story. So we're on a road trip. I've skiing down there, and we kind of had some shitty skiing at the top, and then we landed in Jackson, and this is exactly what we found. We're like, well, what's it going to be like? And when you're sliding really fast, and this is half speed, so you can just imagine how free this feels. This is Chris Rubens, pro skier, friend of mine. That's so fun to ski with. What's really neat about the Tetons is it's endless. It's one range. It's mostly a national park from the Jackson side, and it's all backcountry skiing there. And the guiding is unbelievable. What I've seen them guide at a Jackson blew my mind. Like, I've been guiding loosely since 2004, and these guys ski big lines with clients all the time, and it's all backcountry, and it's all pretty wild. And when I mean big wild lines, like, this is just another day in the park for them. Steep, beautiful boot pack up some untouched couloir. But this year when I was there, I go down for the Arc'teryx Academy, and we do these backcountry clinics, and a couple of years now I've skied this line. It's called Apocalypse, and this is the start of the ski line. Obviously there's no skiing at the start. You might be able to walk down, but you do 3 rappels, and then you're into this incredibly huge line and great skiing. And to me, like, this is at the limit of comfort for the majority of people. And when I went there this year to ski it, a guide had already taken his clients the whole way down this line. And you kind of bit right of this photo, and it curls around behind. It's 700 meter long, over 2,000 feet, and just unbelievable. And to me, I've skied it twice now. It's called Apocalypse. It's one of the tick lists there. And it blew my mind to know that those guys guide this regularly. But yeah, for me, like Jackson Hole, whenever you're heading there, it's you're probably going to get some great skiing, but you also should be ready to put on a rope if you want and just wrap into lines, which is mind blowing. But they also have, there's also, if you guys are like, ooh, I don't want to do that type of skiing, I should have included a picture. There's this whole east facing incredible glades of, 2,700 meter perfect open tree shots where that first powder shot, that video that I showed was taken. And that stuff is endless too. To me, I'm an extremist, so I love to get on the end of the rope and drop into things and ski into stuff like this, wild blue lines. But there is opportunity for everything in Jackson. Yeah, here's kind of more the typical skiing that most people get. Just beautiful trees everywhere, open, mellow, and just incredible stuff. Hopefully some of you guys have skied there, because if you haven't, put it on your list. It blows my mind. What I love about it too is the town has got this incredible character. The ski hill is really neat. It's got, the tram, the historic tram, and Corbett's Couloir. And there's just a vibe of rad skiers there. And it's every time I go there, I get hooked up with some locals. We go on some fun trips, and it's just this really fun vibe. And like I said, as a client, or if you wanted to get guided there, you can get guided in this incredible tree skiing, which I've done on a bunch of the clinics I've been, or you can go and get rad with all the guides. And there's a couple of different guiding operations. Exum Mountain Guides are the friends I know, and they run some pretty wicked adventures. But yeah, to me, check it out. It's well worth it. What do you think, Beryl? You got any thoughts on Jackson? You climb there?
The only I didn't climb there yet. I didn't visit yet. I mean, I'm primarily based in Croatia, but I do know that last year our CEO Victor actually went with a local guide there, Doug Workman, and they did ski down the Grand Teton.
Yeah.
So he did that bucket list, and if you are in shape and know how to ski, it certainly can be done. And guides do that. So it was 8 hours, I think, of uphill, like walking and skiing
and boot backing and ice climbing. Yeah, it's incredible. The Grand Teton, I would have loved to include it, but I don't have any personal stories on it, apart from one morning when I tried to go up it and my partner bailed, and I ended up having a fun day on the middle by myself. But the Grand it's an iconic piece, and I guess I almost didn't include it in this because I have some FOMO that I haven't skied it yet, and I don't want to talk about it because it's on my list and I've yet to even attempt it really. But yeah, Jackson, again, like as you can see, it's got a bit of everything there. It is quite a narrow range, and there's like, in terms of the guiding, there's no heli skiing, there's no cat skiing, there's just lift service or backcountry skiing there. And then the French Alps, which the French Alps are unbelievable. I mean, do we have people in this group that are apart from France? I imagine we do. There is endless opportunity there. The ski resorts are unlike anything. The ski resorts where you can ski into 3 valleys over, and if you miss the lifts back, you have to take an hour-and-a-half taxi to get back to the village you started in. I mean, to me, it's mind-blowing. My resort here has 3 lifts or something, and it all feeds back to the same spot. But France, you can just keep going and going. For me, my first trip there, I was really intimidated by everything. And the second trip there, which I'm going to show you, was with a buddy. We landed, rented a van in Geneva, and drove, slept in the van that night. And within 10 hours of landing, we were standing on a summit. And I grabbed a map, a French map, which you got to be careful. And it had this line that wandered its way up it. And I followed the line up the map because I was like, oh, this is what they normally do. And it got really real. And I don't know if I was following a summer hiking map or what, but all of a sudden, here we were skiing powder off a 10,000 foot peak, a 3,000 meter peak, 10 hours after getting off our airplane. We were just like sitting on the edge of the world. If you could zoom in on my face here, it was more like, what the hell are we doing? And you can see, France has got roads that go through every high call around, and the access is incredible. We had 4 days of skiing here that was mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. Yeah, here it is. So this is a photo from 2005 or 6. And I just couldn't believe what was happening. And what's so amazing about Europe is that Mont Blanc is always hanging around. You're skiing this, you're blown away, but in the background is always Mont Blanc. It's the iconic peak of Europe, that's for sure. And I got really lucky on that. In 2009, I flew over for a Dynafit little test thing to prototype some gear, and it snowed a meter, and there's no way we were going to do it. But then luckily it settled out, and 5 days later, this team of us did a 1-day ascent from town up and had this great skiing. And I'm going to show you the skiing. And you have to understand that personally, I prefer powder skiing on big skis because they're really flowy and surfy, more like water skiing. But you know, these guys, to do this big ascent, these guys all had about 70 millimeter skis. So it's a little bit of a hoppy style, almost reminiscent of the 70s. But you can see we're skiing the North Face, untracked powder.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. That's some ghetto old footage of mine. But to be standing and skiing on the side of the biggest peak in the Alps is unbelievable. And then skiing right down to Chamonix. You can hear the elevations getting me. But yeah, that's what we skied. We skied down that face there, right down that middle line of the glacier where you can see you can ski your whole way through, and right down there.
I think today you got better.
Super amazing. And that's what blows my mind is the history, the mountaineering history, the skiing history. France has got it all. It is just endless. And like I say, the resorts, the history, everything, the villages, all the food you can eat. It blows my mind. And I get to go there. I get to go there every year now because I work with Solomon and we prototype gear. And every December we go, and as a whole crew we go and we test gear. Sometimes it's in the summer too. And I've explored all the different resorts, and I can say that there's so much to the European scene. You know, that I've had some great powder, I've had some bad powder, I've had a bit of everything there, which is the case with most places. But every time I go there, I have a great experience. You know, I love the food. I love skiing to a coffee shop, having a nice latte or an espresso, and then going skiing some more. And you know, you can see in this picture the Téléphérique in the background. Like it's just it's a must. Should I move on? You got any questions on this one before I move on to the next?
Oh no, Greg, go on. I just hop in when it's interesting. But I think about the guiding scene in Europe, I don't know what to add here, because the guiding basically started in Chamonix. So if you're it's
exactly. I mean, the guiding world it started in Chamonix, UIAGM. It's the standard of guides in Europe is incredible. The tests they have to go through, the years of training, all of it's next level. So when you hire a guide there and they're going to take you through a glacier like this, you know that they've got the skill set that they can take you through there safely. And I definitely remember that first year I went there with those photos that we went up Mont Blanc, they agreed to Midi, and we just followed somebody's tracks because we're like, oh, we'll just follow his tracks. And I was like, oh, it's a guide. It shouldn't be too hairy. And then all of a sudden we were looking down these crevasses that were 100 feet deep and weaving through everything. And it was, at the time, I couldn't believe where they were guiding people. And I mean, now more experienced, I recognize that they were doing it all safely and they're all roped up and it was all on point. But it blew my mind to see what they could do there. And now there's Japan, and I think Japan's an interesting one because out of all these places, I think it's the only one that has its own hashtag, right? Japao. If you've ever looked at the Japao hashtag, I mean, I kept on looking through this forever to find one that was captured it all. And this one, I mean, if you watch these videos, it's over the head POW. And what's fun about Japan is that it actually does live up to social media. Like quite often social media can be faked. It's super easy to have 10 centimeters of snow and slide and have it blow up and billow over you and look really good, but yet not really be as good as it looks. Whereas Japao, I mean, it's a thing. I can't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday, but I was being a dad hanging out, and I got a call from Arc'teryx, and they're like, can you leave on Friday to Japan? And I was like, whoa, I'm like 2 days notice. Probably. So hung up, called my wife. No, sorry, hung up, called my mom. Hey mom, can you babysit the kids while I'm gone? I've just been invited to Japan. And, you know, and then she said, yes, hung up with her, talked to my wife. All of a sudden, 2 days later, I was on a flight to Japan and working with Arc'teryx. We had a POW shot, a Japao shot, but with this glove sticking out, this new glove that we worked on for years that we wanted the iconic shot. And I tell you, just to not have a trip and spontaneously be invited to Japan 2 days and be on the flight 2 days later was so exciting. And then at the time, this is 7 years ago, probably 2013 or 14, and there wasn't as much of a Japao following as now, but you know, I knew that it could be incredible there. And going there with Ange Percival, she's this photographer at Arc'teryx I've done endless trips with, and I knew that, you know, she wanted that iconic glove shot, and I knew we could get it, but I was also knew that we were going to get some really cool cultural shots and travel around, and Ange worked her butt off to get some photos. And you know, we were hooked up with a local guiding company. They have snowcats that they kind of run, and there's all these resorts that you can go up, and a lot of the Japanese people seem to stay inside the boundaries, but Europeans and Australians go beyond the boundaries. And this place blew my mind. It was literally snowing 60 centimeters a night. And then you'd wake up the next day and you'd go up this really weird single chair. You'd daydream on your way up, and then all of a sudden you'd be skiing down and the stuff would be billowing over your shoulders. And it's really cool there because most of the skiing in BC, they're all conifers, you know, they're all evergreens. But because Japan is low elevation, it's got all these deciduous trees, which make for these unique forests that you ski through. And if it's snowing 60 centimeters a night, you're getting incredible skiing through these kind of amazing forests, and it's mind-blowing. And what makes Japan special is that it's got this Russian cold air influence, this very Arctic cold air that comes down, and then it's got this warm ocean air that rises up on the mountains, and then it meets right on top, this freezing cold air and this moist ocean air. And that's how it happens. Like they say 20 centimeters a night. They never know. And it's 60 centimeters a night. And it's just this incredible clash of these two systems that creates the best snow that endlessly, you know. But yeah, we just worked our butts off. And here's not the iconic glove shot, but definitely the day that I knew that we'd hit the Japao shot, that one of the ones we were looking for, and that we were getting super lucky. And it wasn't as deep, you know, there's a little bit of faking going on here, but really it was going to be over my waist. We were with Pia, this incredible Norwegian skier. She's just shredding. She definitely outshredded me for photos. And there's Ange. And photo shoots are really funny because you don't experience it as much as you want, but we had 1 week and we were hiking every day and doing these 4 or 5 turns, hiking back up and just getting that incredible pow. But there's something else that makes Japan really special. Well, obviously the culture. I love that there was no English anywhere. That, you know, well, okay, there's a little bit, but like Tokyo or whatever, there was nothing. You didn't know which tram to get on or anything because it's all in Japanese, and it's all they've stayed true to their culture, and I love that. We went out eating and we're ordering off a menu, and there's all these things like that you don't know, and you're basically just like rolling the dice, and you're getting all these things, this food that you don't even know what you're gonna get, and that made it super special. Just a totally different world. And another part of the totally different world is these volcanoes. This is Mount Yote, and I knew that I had to push the gang. I knew we were going there for a photo shoot, but I knew that I wanted desperately to stand on top of a volcano. And a lot of people say they're not steep enough, that, oh, Japan, it's great pow, but it's not steep enough. But from what I saw, there's a ton of great steep skiing. On the Mount Yote, we hiked up partway in the forest, and they started taking photos, and I went to the summit. Getting the whiteout. Barely even see my skis. I like the focus on the eyes here because I got to the summit. I almost lost directions. It was so white out. It was burly, and I was all by myself. And luckily I had a GPS watch that I was able to follow my track back down, because literally in my mind, all I could think about was Canadian skier lost on Mount Yote. And at this point, I'd actually just recovered from an avalanche years ago, and I was kind of still scared of the mountains, and all I could think of was, oh, my family's going to read about me in the newspaper before they find out. But luckily I had a nice GPS watch, followed my track back down, and it was unbelievable. And then we got back to what we were doing, shooting deep pow. You can hear Ange. I'll play that again. You can hear all the shots. She got so many deep powder shots, and unbelievable. And we just worked our butts off. Being a professional athlete, work, and this is the iconic glove that we were looking for. they wanted to make adverts with this, and there was 3 shots. It was like that worked out really well. This one, that one, and that one. And in the end, this one worked out really well. It became the iconic big poster. And kind of what I love about it is if you look at the pinky there, I actually don't have a pinky. So the glove kind of looks a little odd because the pinky's not full of my finger. So I knew, you know, when I saw the ads, I was like, oh, it's obviously me. The pinky doesn't have a finger in there. But pretty amazing. To me, you know, Japan lived up to its name. So yeah, Japan doesn't have its own guides that I've ever seen, but Canadian guides go over, the European guides go over there. You know, we were using Black Diamond Guiding Company that worked well. And I think again, it's got its little culture. You can snowcat there. There is some heli skiing. It's nothing like BC, but they do some heli skiing. And then a lot of it is just these cool little weird resorts that they've built that you can ski tour off of and go back and do loops and stuff off the ski resorts. But I mean, to me, this is iconic power right here. Like if I were to dream of a nice turn, these would be them. Now, I mean, we've all seen the pictures of Norway. Norway's a dream. It's much like those Iceland shots that we had for the other 57 hours talk, where you've got the fjords, you've got the mountains, and there's something pretty unique about it. And I've been there 3 times now, 1 to just do a bunch of talks and 2 times to ski. And both ski times have been super unique. One time we spent a week using this boat to access different adventures. And there's fjords everywhere. We didn't actually live on the boat, although the movie we made it seem like we did. But we traveled around this boat, and it was so cool is that you'd see a mountain, like that mountain off in the background, and you'd sail or motor over there. The captain would let us out. We'd go ski all day, and then we could ski down anywhere to the water, and he'd come and pick us up. And, you know, there's very few places you can do that. And what's really cool about Norway too is the mountains look really big. I mean, those mountains in the background, they look like they should be 10,000 feet tall, but they're actually only usually around 5,000 feet, 4,000 feet. So, or 1,000, like 1,200 to 1,500 meters. They're not huge, but they're small mountains with big relief on them. They're super cool. And like to be up there, our boat was waiting down below, sun setting, and all you see is mountains everywhere. I mean, this is the dream. I remember being so excited about going and living it. Like, look at the water down there. You just feel alone and in the most unique spot in the world. And like I say, they're small mountains with big relief, and they were big. Like here's an incredible couloir, and this one we actually it was after we were on the boat. We drove, and there's roads everywhere. You see mountains off in the distance. You're like, how would you get there? And then you look on a map. You're like, oh, I just follow the road to the bottom of it. This was a 700-meter couloir, never been skied before, so they thought. And here we were, just boot packing up it. We got a filmer to film it for the Solomon free ski episode that we made, this Norwegian episode, and just the best times with friends. This is the late Andreas Frantzen, one of the more extreme skiers I've ever skied with. This guy was comfortable in places that I couldn't even imagine going. But yeah, he was our local source of knowledge, and he could just show us all the gems, and then steep and scary or whatever, it didn't matter to him. He just crushed it. But it's just iconic. This is Olesund, probably said it wrong. There's these villages, like look at this, the history here, you know, the culture, it's just unique. I was blown away running around this village. We were on top of this little bump looking down, and it's definitely a dream trip. And that's what it was for me at the time. And, you know, I'm not a big fish eater. So I ate some really gross meals in my opinion, but those that love fish would go off. And yeah, the people were super friendly. You know, on another trip, we stayed in all these little Airbnbs and little hotels and stuff, and super iconic. Again, just boot packing above the ocean. There's nothing like it. And again, look at those mountains. They look massive, but really they're 1,000 to 1,500 meters, which most people will be able to hike and summit these. And it's not all dramatic and scary. There's lots of mellow and fun. And on some of the peaks, we saw people in Nordic gear, like cross-country gear, skiing off the summits. And there's so much history there. Like, you know, not where it originated, but in Europe, it's definitely where skiing originated. And you just feel the history, and it's fun to be a part of it. You know, I mentioned that you wonder, like, how would you get to that other peak? You can see in the back of this shot, you can just see the road, and there's another mountain that we could go tomorrow. And it's just like, I don't know how many lives you'd need to ski everything there, but here you can see, you know, we got a bit of nice snow. It's not the snow, because it's closer to the ocean. It's rare to get deep, deep snow. It doesn't have that same influence, Arctic influence, that Japan gets, but there's lots of great skiing, and more, it's just the endless variety and fun. I mean, it blew my mind. And we got to like climb some summit and drink the beer that the beer was named after, and it was pretty epic. And when you ski down at the end of the day and you get picked up by this boat, I mean, come on, that's a dream right there. What's really cool too is it's above the Arctic Circle, and you can ski this day. I didn't find the ski shot, but this day we skied and surfed on the same day. I'm not even a surfer, but that was quite a neat thing to tick list. I mean, it just had we skied in the morning and surfed in the afternoon, caught some waves, and just, I mean, it's unique. It is amazing. So I've kind of gone through the spots, and I mean, the talk was supposed to be the best powder on earth, and I mean, I'm biased, so for me, it will stick with British Columbia because I live here. But the truth is, it's all about a journey. It's all about having these cool destinations. And I think for me, skiing is about adventure. And you can go to, if you haven't been to a place, then you should go there. Like if you've skied in British Columbia, I'd suggest going somewhere else. But if you've never skied here, this is my first choice. But if you skied here, I mean, my second choice would probably be Japan or Norway. But I don't really want, ranking things is tough. I don't think things should be ranked, because it depends on the experience you're looking for. But to me, British Columbia, here's the bullet forms. You can't do a talk without bullet forms. British Columbia is about big relief. We have 2,000 meter descents, 2,500 meter descents, big mountains, tons of untracked forests that you can ski through. But the true thing is, it's long season. That is the best thing here, is we start skiing in November and we end in April or March this year. But it's a long season with a ton of variety in there. And depending on where you are in BC, there's Whistler that gets different snow than Revelstoke, that gets different snow than Kicking Horse. And there's so much variety, and also the variety of ways to explore it. The heli skiing, the backcountry, the ski resorts, the cats. It's like, it is incredible. So to me, obviously I'm biased, so take it with a grain of salt, but this is where, to me, you can get tons. But as you saw from my other shots, I mean, the Grand Tetons, it's about adventure. It's about deep powder. And I love any opportunity I have to go there. But yeah, adventurous guiding, like I said, where the guides have taken people there has blown my mind. Not the small, but the mountain town, the culture, and the fact that it's the epicenter of ski history in the States makes it an awesome place to go. Japan, I mean, the glove shot kind of shows it all. It can be incredible. Japan's temperamental, though. To me, the best time is Jan to mid-March. I've seen some great skiing in April there, but it can be temperamental. So sometimes you get lucky. My mom went there for a trip 2 years ago, and 3 other days rained. 3 other days were epic. So you can get really lucky, like I did, or you might not. It's like anywhere, you know. There's a timing. But definitely Jan to mid-March. I mean, the French Alps, as I mentioned, it's unparalleled ski resorts. You can just ski forever, long season, and really, if you're looking for an après scene, this is the one. La Folie Douce, you know, you can be on the ski resort, and all of a sudden you're partying and dancing on tables. Not me, but lots of people were. You know, it's a must-do. And the espressos.
Are you sure it was not you?
Yeah, I wanted to, but it was my son's birthday, so I had to be a good dad and make sure I got to town and called him and was a good dad. So I didn't get to dance on the table, but it's still on my list. Norway, you know, I mentioned it. Like, it's just incredible. Like, there's lots of guiding operations that run boats that you can get on, and you can tour around with friends and ski stuff, and there's nobody around, and it's just an endless variety. Yeah, I just think it's a unique combination. And the lodge boat access, like, is must do. But yeah, what really blew my mind there, and does every time I've gone, is that they look so huge. And then as you wind your way up there and you work your way up there, you realize that they're not as big as they look, yet the rewards are incredible and the skiing's good. And yeah, it's a great thought to go. I'll start that in a second. So yeah, I mean, to me, like I said, if I was really to give you my list, British Columbia, because I live here, but Japan, Norway, Jackson, and then France. That's kind of the order I'd do it in. But I don't think there should be any order, because that's my point of view. I think you guys, if you haven't been somewhere, you'd figure out your own list. But every place has its time and can be incredible. And you also might get unlucky. You know, there's times even when you come to Revelstoke that it's not great. Not as many, but it's, you know, it's all about just going on those adventures and skiing with friends. Untracked snow with friends in Rogers Pass. Yeah, and just leaving tracks behind and being able to look at them later and just be excited. So a lot of this I have to thank all the photographers, because these guys, or these people, took photos of me in these places, and without them I wouldn't be able to share good stories. So that's a big part, is thanking them. We're gonna have a Q&A at the end. Let's have a Q&A now. I'll just put this back to stop share.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Greg. It's really been a great and inspiring presentation. I mean, you certainly have your fair share of adventures. I will say personally, I like your conclusion, or maybe an advice to people. The best is like, go and make your own list, because if you visit the top 5, it doesn't really matter which is the top 1 destination, because you have 5 in the back. So that, I think, is really a great advice, and something that 57 Hours wants to do as well. We want to inspire people to, like, as we say, buy adventures. You know, used gear with 5 adventures is better than new gear with 1. That's our motto. So yeah, let's go on with the question. I'll actually start off with something that more than one person asked, and it's basically, you showed us some stuff that look a bit extreme and advanced. Maybe you can tell to people, okay, like, how fit and experienced do you need to be to experience these places that you've seen?
Yeah, so I think in every one of those places, there's always going to be the opportunity to use chairlifts to access. And then, you know, if we're going to talk backcountry skiing is hiking. It's just like walking. It takes a lot of effort, but it's just walking. And, you know, quite often I have people here that I take up our resort, and we just walk 1 kilometer horizontally and then get great skiing, and then traverse back. And, you know, and it's mellow skiing. You know, obviously I showed a bunch more extreme stuff because that's usually more exciting to show, but really quite often the best skiing is the mellow stuff, and where you're not worried about avalanches, you're just enjoying the flow of the snow. But yeah, you really, you know, one of my guiding groups that I guide every year, their average age is around 70 to 71, depends on the year. And we go and we just hike around for 3-4 hours and get some incredible skiing and enjoy the mountains. And, you know, anybody can do this. You just, if you have a good guide, they'll tailor it to your skill set. And, you know, I've taken lots of people who have never skied before, never ski toured before, and we've had amazing moments. So, I think in all those places, there's always going to be the opportunity to go up and just go off a chairlift or off a snowcat or something to make it a lot easier. That makes sense? I can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, it certainly makes sense, and it's good to for people to know that they can go and visit these places and enjoy them fully. You don't need to be a pro to. Maybe you need to be a pro to get an arctic shot, or like Greg did, but you can do your own shots and you can enjoy backcountry really, really well.
Yeah, and a lot of it is intimidating, right? You see all these big mountains and it seems really intimidating, but we all started somewhere. There's always a starting point, right? We're all inexperienced at some point. And you just tailor it to what your skill set is, and you can have a great time.
Great, that's actually great advice as well. And then the next question, James asked it through the forum, but we have a few more people asking more about Japan. So you already mentioned the best time to come is January to March. And then can you maybe tell us a bit more which exact resorts would you recommend? Would you recommend
Wow.
doing two to
I honestly, the Zutsu, I don't know. There's so many resorts. Like, to me, it was such a blur that a lot of the names, we were on the North Island and it worked out really well. Hakuba sounds incredible. It sounds like there's bigger mountains there. I can't say specific, honestly. I'd be lying if I was really to point you anywhere. I think if you just go to Japan in January to March and more research online, you'll figure it out. I like the North Island. To me, seemed pretty incredible. The forests, Mount Yote. But my mom went to Hakuba and she had a great time there too. So Hokkaido, David's saying Hokkaido, yeah.
And if someone is visiting for 10 days, would you recommend doing one place or maybe visiting 2-3 places?
Yeah, I think I'd go 2-3 places because then you can experience a little bit more, and the traveling is always the fun part too, and seeing the sights. 10 days would be a perfect amount, I'd say. Because then, you know, if you do get a couple hot, warm days, it won't ruin your trip, you know? Yeah,
Great.
David's saying the Hakuba gets variable weather, and that's exactly when my mom was there with their group skiing. They got some variable weather, but they also got some great weather. And I also, 2 years ago, somebody sent me from, like, we always think January and February, but he sent me some shots in April of him skiing mountains that looked incredible. So the roll of the dice always.
Well, I mean, we have more questions about Japan, but I think it's more the
that's
same.
Steve's point there too is to just pick an island. Don't go between the two islands, but pick and, you know, travel around.
Well, that's probably a good point. So maybe a few resorts on a same island is great.
Mm-hmm.
And also, one more question is where, like moving down to British Columbia, your home ground, it's Eoin asking about where would you recommend to go for cat skiing?
Cat skiing, I mean, in British Columbia, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. There's some pretty incredible places. I mean, Monashee Powder, Mustang Powder, all really good. Mostly in the interior. Near Nelson, there's a couple of great great cat skiing also. Retallick. Retallick's probably really good. There, if anybody wants, just find me on Instagram. It's _GregHill_. And I love answering questions and helping people discover anything. So after this, in a couple of weeks, whenever, if you have any questions, just reach out, because I would love to direct you to have the best skiing of your life. So,
and
Alaska, so let me just talk to Martin. I love Alaska. I've only ski mountaineered in Alaska. I went up Denali or almost to the top. So I've never done that iconic, incredible Alaska. And there is no doubt that Alaska has got the special combination of cold air and moist air and even bigger, more wild peaks than Japan. So it, you know, probably if I'd skied there, it would have been my number one. From what I've heard, it seems a magical combination. But yeah, I've only ski mountaineered there, and it was pretty steep and wild. So it wasn't just a deep pow that you see.
Thanks, Greg. And we actually have a question about heli skiing in BC as well from Gustavo.
Mm-hmm.
Can you
highlight?
Yeah. Basically, what's the best for heli skiing in BC with steep terrain and deep powder?
So heli skiing is an interesting one because it's obviously costly. You know, again, I'm really stuck on the interior of BC because it's colder snow with almost the same amount as the coast. One of my favorites, I used to guide at Eagle Pass, which was Eagle Pass out of Revelstoke. And what's neat about it is they've got day trips, but we're talking $1,200 Canadian for a day. But it's unlimited skiing. It's you and 4 people in a you and 3 people plus your guide in a helicopter. And it's just like, it's unbelievable. You just get dropped off, you ski a line, your guide looks for something else that's untracked, drops you off there. Yeah, I'm trying to be an environmentalist, so I don't heli ski guide anymore, but it's an incredible way to get skiing. Micah Heli is pretty amazing. They fly you into their lodge. It's 5-star. It's as good as it can get, you know, the food, everything. CMH is kind of most commonly known heli ski company in Canada, and they're huge and they offer an amazing product also. So again, get in touch with me and I'll help you. You fly, yeah. So just reach out and I'll help you find what you're looking for, because it really is. I mean, to me, it's the small group. If you have just 3 other people, so you find 3 friends and you get to heli ski for a day or a week with them, it'll be your dream.
Cool. Thanks for that. And we have one more question from Jack Spence, maybe unrelated to locations. He's actually asking about what sorts of exercise regimen do you follow out of season to stay in shape for skiing? So
yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I'm lucky as I'm an at-home person, so I work on my computer at different times, but I run a lot and I bike a lot and I climb mountains. So I do a bit of everything. I mean, this week I went for a 75-kilometer road ride and I went for several 15-kilometer runs. So I just do a little bit of everything, but I'm half the fit man I used to be. But my 30s, I was a lot stronger than I am in my 40s, but I still like to push myself and make sure I'm trying to, stay as fit as I can.
Cool. We actually have one more related question from David. So David says, David is based out of Wasatch. He does ski 100 days a year, but he's 67. Mm-hmm. And he says he's not that fast on the uphill. What suggestions do you have to improve the uphill speed for David?
Well, up in the Wasatch, I've had some incredible days in the Wasatch where you get out the one day, you can barely open your door because there's 24 inches of snow, a lot of snow. The next day, there's the same amount. The skin tracks are a little steep. So for me, if you're hiking, especially if you go to Europe, the Canadians, we like to do mellow tracks. And then if it's mellow, it takes a little bit less power and you can just kind of keep the momentum going. And that's essential is, going slow, but having momentum the whole time will get you more. So I just think, to me, I like to walk and be able to talk. And if I'm talking, I can just keep going. It means I'm at the right level. If I'm breathing too hard that I cannot talk, then I'm obviously not going to be able to go a long time. So to me, the magic to having longer days is mellower skin tracks, slower pace than you'd think, but just more consistent. So, I like to hike for about an hour, have a small little break, hike for an hour. And I have little candies in my pockets, so then I can keep the flow. I don't have to stop to have a snack. I can just kind of put a little bit of candy in and make sure I go nonstop for that hour. Hopefully that helps.
Cool. Thanks for the answer. We have a few more from people. So Marie is asking about whether you know if these places will be open this winter, or maybe you can generally give your comment on the COVID situation and how do you see things happening.
I mean, that's the $1 million question these days. We're all really concerned, about international borders and everything. I mean, what I've been trying to think about is backyard adventures, and that wherever you live, if you can find a radius that you can drive to, that's your best option, because you're probably guaranteed you'll be able to drive there, much like the European borders are open now. It's a challenge. I honestly, the guiding operation, we're constantly discussing what's going to happen. I do think, backcountry skiing will happen because it's easy to separate, and it's just going to be smaller group stuff. I don't know what lodge life's going to be like, if they're going to be able to put 15 people into a lodge that all come from remote places. So I wish I could have an answer for you, but I mean, it's definitely not my forte is adventure, not figuring out what the world's going to do over a pandemic.
Yeah, that's actually what everyone, I think, has been wondering about with us at 57 Hours as well. But rules will probably change some behavior until like the vaccine and everything and the cure is found. And we also had a question if things might become more expensive because of this. The answer is most probably yes at some places. We already know some guiding guides that had to reduce the number of group, but they still have to pay the same amount to hire a hut and all that stuff. So I think giving an exact answer is impossible, but most probably things will change. The only question is how much and in what form.
Yeah,
Cool.
and I
We
think to
have-
look at it and figure out the type of trip that won't change as much, right? Like I was saying, if you can be with a small group that's going to stay in an Airbnb and then just go into the mountains as your own group with a guide, might be much simpler than committing to flying across the world to go to some cabin that might be close. I don't know. Yeah, it's yeah, who knows? It's a weird world right now.
Yeah, that's for sure. And there is a few more questions for you, so I think we can answer a few more. We are like at the full hour, but I think a few more minutes is good. So there is a question about skiing in Quebec. Actually, you started there, so do you have a top places there? Maybe a few words.
I grew up in Sutton, just south of Montreal, about an hour out of Montreal. Mount Sutton was the mountain I skied on. I have not skied on Mount Sutton since I was 17, so 27 years ago. So it's been a while. But yeah, I mostly skied at Orford, Owl's Head, Bromont, and Sutton were kind of the main skis places that I had fun on. And honestly, like there is powder skiing. Like on Sutton, we had all these gladed runs through trees. And when I moved out west, I was like, you're not going to be able to ski powder. You won't understand it. But I'd actually had a couple powder days out east, and it, I think, in my mind, it gave me a great foundation. And there's no doubt that all the ski racing I did, skiing on the harder snow, made me a better skier now. And yeah, Dennis, I'm sure it hasn't changed at all because it's magical as it was, and it's beautiful. I'd love to go back. One of these days, I got to figure out how to go back and do a fun trip out east. Problem is, once ski season starts, I'm out west, and all I want to do is ski big mountains. But one day I should go back.
Maybe for a short visit to your roots. One interesting question from Vasily. So he's wondering if you were to go to a destination you've never been to, which one would you choose today?
Wow, we mentioned the Alaska. Alaska's got to be it because I've never done Thompson Pass, Valdez. You know that you watch those videos and it's unbelievable. And I probably should do it sooner than later because as I'm getting older, I'm really finding my risk tolerance is changing a little bit, and I'm a little bit more chicken and less daring. So I should probably do it sooner than later. But yeah, it would be Alaska, and to ski, to just go there for steep powder skiing.
Cool. And maybe one more thing, and hope it's not too much. And I didn't even know that you lost pinky, Greg. So I was wondering, is that is that outdoor related? And is it also like, does it affect your climbing and skiing ability?
No, I lost it when I was 14. It was my first experience at taking risks and not committing to risk. So I climbed up the mast on a boat, and I was about 30 feet up, and I jumped off and grabbed back onto some wires that grabbed my pinky and tore it off. And no, it's, I mean, I can't cup water. There's no real big disadvantages except in the lefties club, except going through drive-throughs. When you go through a drive-through and they give you the money, it often bounces out and then they feel all bad. But anyhow, no, it's, it was, honestly, that's what it was. It was learning that I'm a risky person, that if I'm going to do risk, I should, one, research the risk as much as I can and then commit to it when I actually go for it. So at 14, I didn't think that and lost a finger and learned a lot.
I guess it taught you about taking risks as well.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, Greg. I think we can conclude the session. There have been a few more questions that are in the forum. Greg, we'll make sure that Greg sees it all and answers to people. We also shared his Instagram profile, so feel free to reach out to Greg and ask him any questions about the locations he presented here. Thank you all for coming. Greg, I don't know if you have anything else to say to people. We had, I can say we had 135 people joining on the Zoom webinar, and I think 5 or 10 more on Facebook.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I just like, hopefully, one, that this inspires you to kind of start dreaming about places to go. I think I mean, we're definitely, like I mentioned at the start, we're privileged, but if we can take advantage of the great lives we have and go on adventures, and we're super lucky. Yeah, hopefully this inspired you to go to one of these 5 spots, or if you've been to all these spots, to start thinking of another. Yeah, I've been lucky, and I think I'm trying to help my kids also look out for adventure, because I think traveling is a great way to experience different cultures and to learn a lot about yourself and your own culture. So yeah, just essentially, like I said, reach out to me on Instagram. It seems to be the easiest way. And if you need more information, you know, yesterday I was emailing GPS points to somebody who's going on an adventure. I'm open, get in touch. I love to help people find their own adventures and realize their own dreams.
Great. I think this is a perfect message to finish off this webinar.